We'll start with general questions. Anybody have any questions? Everybody good? Okay. Someone's been holding back. Let's see. Okay. How to deal with real estate agents in a small market if you have two. Okay. Should we use them to buy from each other's listings? How about troubling the relation or hard feelings in the three-tier structure? Having several corps for purchasing buildings equals several accounting costs. What are typically costs per corp in the three-tier structure? How does the money move up from the real estate corporation with when financing? If it goes back to the holding, how can this amount be secure? It will be the real estate corp that will be having the secure financing on the property. So what about the holding corp? Okay. All right. So let's start with, yeah, and I'm glad you, obviously we want the questions so everyone can learn from our questions. So how do we deal with let's start at the beginning. How do we deal with real estate agents in small markets if you have two? Okay. So when you're dealing with your power team, you obviously want them to benefit from the relationship that you have. So, in a situation where you're dealing with two realtors and you want them both to prosper while you grow your business, because you want their business to grow, I would see if it was possible to separate them, maybe one residential, one commercial as your primary. Not meaning that they can't send you, crossover deals, but I think you want them to feel like they're not competing against each other. Now, you might decide you want to compete. You want them to compete to in the end get one realtor as your primary source. You can do that if you wish to, but I would caution any sort of use of them long term if they're competing. So I definitely would want them both to feel like they were on my team and they were benefit from the relationship. I think that's very, very important with your team. You want your team to work with you. At least my belief is, not for you. And you want them to pick up the phone when you call, and when you do that, you need to make sure that you take care of them. Since are both buyer and seller agents, so it's hard for them to be both parties. What do you mean by that, Albert? What do you mean about they are both buyer-seller agents? Well, every agent can represent, you're going to find agents that represent the buyer and the seller, or do both, and both represent both the buyer and the seller. The relationship you have with these individuals, if I understand correctly, you want one of them to be a buying agent, one of them to be a selling agent. Is that what you mean? I thought we had to have, well, actually, and I mean, this is not every single circumstance, but realtors are most beneficial, I find, as selling realtors, not buying realtors. Buying realtors, because of the obligation they have to get the retail price of a property, which is not an area that we like to participate in, that might create some challenges. That being said, a realtor can give you, pocket listings, which are unlisted properties, and or more likely properties they don't want to sell because they're not in a retail condition. So, as far as I know, and I don't know the relationship you have with them or who these people are, but I would assume they could do both. If one has a listing for sale, should we seek help from another one? I would say, for the most part, no. But if you feel like this individual is going to help you in the purchase, then sure. But a buying realtor really doesn't, in my experience, is not going to try to negotiate, a lower price as a mandate. They're more responsible to make sure the transaction is legal, right? It's done right. it's completed properly, and both parties were protected. And obviously the realtor themselves have their own protections in place. They have to make sure they do what they're supposed to do. That being said, I don't see a lot of benefit to having a buying realtor in a transaction, because I don't know what they can do for you. Now, that could be different based on the relationships or the type of realtor that you have, but buying realtors, they don't really, I don't think they really are going to do much in the way of getting the best possible price, and they're trying to complete a transaction. Remember, they don't get paid until the transaction is done too. That's another challenging conflict of interest in my view of the real estate industry with realtors. Okay. So to protect yourself, so you don't really need the realtor to protect you. I would want if it comes to contracts, your attorney to protect you and your contract to protect you. So I don't know the benefit there. Okay, so it would be use the seller's agent for the deal. So a selling agent, a seller's agent, just because, and when I say selling agents, I mean to sell your own properties. That's what I mean. They're great for selling properties, not so great for buying properties, because their intention is not to get the best possible deal. Their intention is to, get retail. That's what they deal with, the retail market. So a selling agent in the case where you're selling a property, great. Otherwise, it's limited in the acquisition of property to use a realtor by choice, unless the realtor somehow brings that to you, more likely as a pocket listing or listing they don't want because it's not in a retail state, making it challenging for them to sell that property. Does that make sense? Okay, so you're not better off, in my experience. Not saying not to use realtors. I like realtors. I think they're important to our team. But you want your team to do what they're good at and how you can benefit them and they can benefit you. So having an agent look for properties for you, absolutely, you can do that. But I wouldn't, if I saw a property, I wouldn't necessarily get an agent to step into the deal because I was looking at a property to buy. Does that make sense, Kathy? Real estate agents are great. I mean, but you want them to work in your system, in your framework that makes sense for everybody. My comment is about approaching the listing agent as a buyer. Okay. Let me read the first question again. You are better off having a buying agent to represent you if you are buying. I'm a little confused, Kathy. Many people think they get a better deal not having representation. And you're saying that they get a better deal with representation, Kathy? Is that what you mean? Okay, so if a person's represented by a selling agent, you're saying it's better to get a buying agent to represent you. I would argue that that would be the case, without question, if the buying agent understood what type of investing you're doing. I wouldn't think that would be a bad thing. The challenge is the buying agent, we have to take into account the buying and selling agent can't get paid till the deal is done. So sometimes that can create a conflict of interest because the selling agent and the buying agent are trying to find a deal that works for both parties. That being said, they typically believe in the retail value of property. So they will pursue a retail transaction that's fair and equitable for both parties. As far as we're concerned, just about every property is overpriced. So that might create a challenge for those realtors. If you have a relationship with a realtor and you want them to give you representation to buy property with them, as you're looking to buy property, as long as they understand what you're trying to achieve, I don't think that's bad at all, right? Because, excuse me, at the end of the day, the buying agent's getting paid through the transaction as well as the selling agent. So yeah, in a FSBO scenario, no agent is necessary. Yeah, no agent is necessary. I think you use an agent when it's appropriate. I definitely would suggest using an agent to sell a house or sell a property. I think that's wise to do that. In the case of looking for property, you know, I wouldn't say don't go after properties because a realtor didn't give it to you or because you don't have a realtor representing you. I think that could constrict your business. I think realtors and the people on your team are very important. I think it's important to have realtors that understand your business model, and if they do, then absolutely, if you think they're going to help you in a purchase scenario, then I would do it. Because an ethical buying agent will negotiate on behalf of the buyer. Yeah, Kathy, you're right, but the agent believes in the market value of property, so they're not going to come and say, well, this property, we want to buy this property for 30% below value or 20% below value. I don't think the buying agent, because they deal in retail market, it's going to be a challenge for them, I think, from time to time, unless they know your business and what you're doing. I think that might not you. Well, that's great, and that's awesome, I think that's important. But we have to remember this is because you understand, right? What's going on. Yes, but conventional realtors do advise per market value. That's it, Kathy. The market value, as far as we're concerned, typically is overvalued. That would be my view about the real estate market. As a general statement, not in all cases, but I would say that it's hard to, as an investor, it's hard to justify $1 million property that can only get you even $5,000 a month in rent. To me, it doesn't make sense as an investor. Realtors deal in the retail market, and typically for people that are going to live there, buy to live, which is a different scenario, different motivations. But when it comes to investing, it might be a challenge. No, that's all right. This is good. No, this is excellent, Kathy. Please, this is great. Yeah. We want this kind of dialogue and discussion, so we can all understand better those relationships, right? We're all learning from this experience, and this is why it's important for us to keep the dialogue up. Does anybody else have any comments or questions in reference to Albert? Are you good? And Annie, you good? No worries. It was a rich week. Yes, we had 2 others. Okay. Relations. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, wait. 2. In the 3-tier structure, having several corps for purchasing building equal several accounting costs, what are typical costs per corp? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the answer to this, and then I'm going to bring in Adnan to further articulate the idea and what you can do with corporations, because he's an actual lawyer. So what I want to say is this, okay? There is a cost, right, for doing business, and the cost should be justified for the end gain or the process of the transaction that we're profiting in. So we want to have an open mind, right, to make sure that we have the best people on our team. So cost is a cost. We have to look at that. But remember, you want the best people on your team, and those costs should be absorbed because